The wagon creaked to a halt, wood groaning like an old man's bones. Dust swirled in the late afternoon sun, curling around the boots of Thomas Avery as he stood in the yard, rifle tucked easy in his arm. The team of mules snorted, stamping at the dry earth. A figure shifted on the bench, veiled, stiff-backed, hands gripping the reins like the desert might tear them away. Clara clung to her father's sleeve, her voice a whisper. "Pa, is that her?" The stranger climbed down slow, skirts brushing the dust, each step careful as though the ground itself tested her weight. The veil caught the light, a pale scrap against the hard sky. She set down a single leather bag, its corners worn soft, and lifted her chin just enough to meet Thomas's gaze through the thin cloth. The ranch sat quiet but for the restless cattle beyond the fence and the whine of cicadas in the brush. The air felt thick, waiting. Thomas cleared his throat. "You Evelyn Hart?" The woman nodded once, silent. The veil shivered with her breath. Clara took a step forward before Thomas could hold her back. The little girl's eyes, wide and too old for her years, searched the stranger's shadow. She reached out a hand, small fingers brushing fabric. Her voice came out steady, though soft enough the wind might have carried it away. "Can she stay forever?" The question hung heavier than the desert heat. Thomas blinked, caught off guard, his hand tightening on the rifle stock. Evelyn's head turned sharply toward the child. For a moment, the veil trembled as though she had drawn in a breath too deep. From the ridge, far off, came the faint rumble of hooves. Thomas glanced to the horizon. Just shadows, moving slow along the canyon rim, but enough to stiffen his shoulders. He turned back quick, masking it with the tug of his hat brim. "Best get inside," he muttered. The woman followed without a word, bag clutched to her chest. Boards creaked under her weight as she crossed the porch. Clara darted ahead, the screen door banging open, hinges protesting. Inside, the air was cooler, dim. Dust motes drifted like ash through the shafts of light. Evelyn stopped just past the doorway, shoulders rigid. Her hand brushed the scarred wood of the table, fingers curling for balance. Thomas watched her closely, a bride bought in paper and promise, delivered by wagon and dust. Yet the silence around her was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of someone who had walked through fire and come out carrying smoke. Outside, the cattle bawled sudden, uneasy. Thomas's gaze flicked again toward the horizon through the open window. The shapes on the ridge had vanished, leaving only the hum of insects and the settling creak of the house. But Clara's words still lingered, soft as prayer, heavy as judgment. "Can she stay forever?" The hammer fell clean on the post, with splintering sharp under Evelyn's swing. Sweat traced down her temple, veil gone now, hair pinned but loose at the edges. The mare at the fence tossed its head, uneasy, while Clara clapped from the rail, legs swinging, dust clinging to her boots. Thomas leaned on the corral, jaw set. "You swing that hammer like you've been doing it all your life." Evelyn didn't answer. She only steadied the post, drove the next nail through with one hard strike. The sound carried across the yard, sharp as gunfire. Later, at supper, Clara's voice filled the silence. She rode the buckskin bareback, paw faster in the wind. The girl's eyes shone in the lamplight, pride bubbling. "Can we keep her just like the horses?" Evelyn lowered her gaze to her plate. The lamplight caught the edge of an old scar along her wrist, white against her skin. She shifted her sleeve down, but Thomas had already seen. His spoon hung still. In town, whispers curled like smoke. The saloon's door swung wide as two men leaned close over their drinks. "Woman like that don't just show up at a ranch. You see the mark on her wrist. Chains." The barkeep polished a glass, eyes narrowed, but said nothing. His silence felt heavier than words. Back at the ranch, thunderheads gathered in the far distance, heat pressing down before the storm. Evelyn moved through the barn with ease, saddling a horse one moment, hauling feed the next. She worked like the place had always been hers. Yet every time Clara's laughter echoed, Evelyn's face shadowed, a flicker of something that looked like grief. Thomas found her at the well, drawing water. "You ain't told me much." The rope creaked as the bucket rose, water sloshing silver in the twilight. Evelyn's grip tightened. "Best not to," she said, voice low, carrying weight that pressed the air flat between them. A hawk screamed high above. Dust swirled sudden, rolling across the yard like smoke. Thomas lifted his eyes to the horizon, figures again, moving slow, no more than shadows against the falling sun. He felt the prickle at the back of his neck. That night, the storm broke. Rain hammered the roof, thunder cracking close. Clara curled against Evelyn's side, small fingers tangled in fabric. Evelyn sat rigid in the dark, eyes open, tracking the sound of every gust, every creak of timber. In the morning, tracks showed at the edge of the ranch, hoofprints deep and fresh, circling near the fence before turning back toward the canyon. Thomas crouched low, hand brushing the churn mud. His jaw hardened. From behind him, Evelyn's voice cut through the still air. "They've found me." The sun bled low over the horizon when the first rider's silhouette crested the ridge. Dust plumed behind him, and more followed, dark shapes against the fire of the sky. Their horses moved steady, unhurried, like men certain of what they'd come to claim. Thomas stood on the porch, rifle balanced in his hands. His knuckles whitened on the stock as he counted them. 5, maybe 6, with one riding ahead. Clara pressed her face to the window pane inside, breath fogging the glass. The lead rider called out before he'd even reached the yard. His voice carried smooth and sharp, the tone of a man used to command. "Evening, Avery. Heard tell you've got something of mine." Evelyn stepped out from the shadows of the barn, skirts dust-stained, hair pulled back tight. She didn't flinch as the riders fanned out across the yard, horses snorting, iron shoes striking sparks on stone. Thomas's voice cut flat. "Ain't nothing here belongs to you." The man on the black horse grinned. Jonas Creed. His teeth caught the last sliver of sun as he tipped his hat. "That's so, 'cause I see you're standing right there." His hand lifted, pointing to Evelyn. "Ran from me. Thought she could hide under another man's roof." Clara burst from the door, running straight to Evelyn, clutching her skirts. "Don't let him take her." Evelyn placed a hand on the girl's head, steady, though her eyes never left Creed. "You'll have to ride over graves before I go back," she said. The riders laughed, the sound rough, scraping the air. Creed leaned forward in his saddle. "That could be arranged." The yard stilled. The cicadas quieted, leaving only the restless shift of hooves, the click of gun belts settling. Thomas lifted the rifle, barrel leveled at Creed's chest. "You step 1 inch closer, you'll be the first man I drop." Evelyn pulled Clara behind her, her own voice low but firm. "He won't stop, Thomas. He never has." Creed's grin widened. "She tells it true. I own what I touch." His hand brushed the butt of his pistol, slow, taunting. The sky deepened into bruised purple, the last light fading fast. Shadows stretched long, folding across the ranch like dark wings. Thomas's breath came tight, finger resting on the trigger. Evelyn's hand found the edge of the rifle, steadying it just enough. Her eyes, sharp in the dim light, told him more than words. She had done this before. The first shot rang out sudden, not from Thomas's rifle but from the canyon wall. One of Creed's men firing high, cracking timber on the barn. The horses screamed, dust exploding in the yard. Thomas shouted, "Get down!" as another shot split the night. Clara's scream cut through the thunder of hooves, and the standoff broke into chaos. Evelyn didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on Creed, and her hand slid toward Thomas's rifle with purpose, the moment of revelation heavy in the air. The rifle cracked in Evelyn's hands, the shot tearing Creed's hat clean off his head. Smoke curled from the barrel as the yard erupted. Horses rearing, men shouting, the sharp stutter of gunfire echoing against canyon walls. Thomas dragged Clara behind the trough, wood splintering around them as bullets chewed through. Dust and blood filled the air, sharp in the throat. Evelyn strode into the open, coat flaring, eyes cold as river stone. Each step fell certain, her rifle leveled steady. One rider charged. Her shot dropped him from the saddle before his pistol cleared leather. Another wheeled wide. She swung the barrel, fired again, horse screaming as both beast and man crashed hard into the dirt. Creed spat, fury twisting his grin. "Knew it. Knew you couldn't stay hid. Widowmaker. The name cut through the chaos. Thomas looked up, shock flashing in his eyes. Evelyn didn't deny it. She racked another round, voice ringing sharp. I swore I'd never raise a gun again. But tonight, you pushed me back into the fire. Creed drew, his revolver a blur in the twilight. She dropped low, rolled, fired. His shot whined past her ear, while hers split a rider from the saddle clean. The others faltered, glancing to Creed for command. The storm narrowed to two. Evelyn faced him across the yard, lantern light trembling against the sweat and grit on her face. Creed dismounted slow, boots sinking in the dust, revolver glinting. You'll die here, just like the rest you put down, he snarled. Her voice cut flat. Then I'll die free. They circled, the world shrinking to breath, grit, and steel. Thomas held Clara tight, his whisper lost in the roar of silence before thunder. Creed lunged first, pistol flashing. Evelyn's rifle barked, the slug tearing through his arm. He staggered, dropped the gun, but dove for it again, eyes wild. She didn't hesitate. One last shot, straight and true, and Jonas Creed crumpled into the dirt, the desert swallowing him whole. The yard stilled. Smoke drifted, heavy and bitter. The last riders fled, spurred into the dark, their hoofbeats fading into the canyon. Evelyn stood over Creed's body, chest heaving, rifle hanging loose at her side. For a long breath, only the cicadas dared speak. Then Clara's voice broke through, trembling but sure. Can she stay forever? Thomas rose slow, eyes locked on the woman who had walked into his life, a stranger, and stood now as something more. His answer came quiet, rough as gravel but certain. Yes. The wind carried the smoke away, leaving the ranch under a cold, star-cut sky. Somewhere out in the desert, the tale had already taken root, whispered into legend. The Widowmaker who rose again, not for blood, but for family.